everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. Here we go. Let's go ahead and talk about easily my second least favorite film in this franchise. And I'm joined in this video by my buddy Blacktastic Media, who was in my review for the fourth film, The Dream Master. So if you guys haven't checked out that review, highly recommend doing so. But we'll be hearing from him in just a little bit. But a big thanks to him for being in this video. You can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. And let's go ahead and get into this disaster. Yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and be really straight about this right out of the gate. This is my second to least favorite film in the franchise, or my second least favorite. I don't really know if I worded that properly. But yeah, this is a movie for me that just, it feels all over the place. It feels like it really doesn't know what it wants to be and just feels all around a little bit messy. We're once again reintroduced to the character of Alice, who was our main protagonist in the fourth film, and her love interest, who was kind of shoehorned into the story in the fourth film and kind of becomes a bigger part in this movie. And if you guys remember from my review from the fourth one, I was not a huge fan of Alice and how she kind of came to be into the story. I just kind of find her to be a bit of a bland and kind of forgettable character and lead protagonist in this franchise. You know, when I look back at the people who were going up against Freddy throughout this franchise, she is easily one of the most bland out of all of them, and she just doesn't stand out to me. And part of that is the writing, part of it is the acting. You know, I don't want to completely shit on everything about this movie. There's definitely positives, but I think that this is a movie that just feels all over the place, super messy, and it's just one of those Freddy Krueger movies that for me just really didn't hold up going back and rewatching it. So this film takes place 1 year after the events of the fourth film. Alice, Dan, Yvonne, Mark, and Greta, the last three being new characters, are all graduating from high school, and yeah, they're going on to just live their lives. Not too long into the film, we find out that Dan has impregnated Alice, so now she has a kid coming, and then not too long into the film, Dan is actually the first person to be killed, and probably one of my favorite kills in the movie. There's only 3 kills in this movie, so beyond this film kind of being a bit of a slog to get through, kind of easily the most convoluted and kind of poorly written story in the franchise, maybe not so much. I think the worst one is the 6th one, but it's one of the worst written films in the franchise. Even with all those elements, it just doesn't even have the kill factor that you come to a lot of these slasher films for that could really save the movie. I will say though, I think the highlight of the film is definitely Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. Again, he just has this charisma as the character that I just thoroughly enjoy. I think he's great as the character, and even in the worst scenes, he definitely kind of saved the movie for me and made it entertaining to watch. But that's kind of the downside to this movie, is because there are only 3 kills. So though Freddy does pop up at different points in the movie, I don't think he was in this movie enough, in my opinion, and it kind of just made the film kind of boring to watch. I've said it before on the channel, I think the worst thing a movie can be for me is boring. Even the films that have poor special effects or poor acting or even a poor script can still be saved for me by having, you know, some sort of entertainment value, whether it's a cheesy entertainment value, whether it's one specific character, or in the case of slashers, it's, you know, the kills. A lot of films in these different slasher franchises are definitely piss poor, depending on the franchise and how far you've gotten into the franchise, with some of them being really good and some of them being just okay, or some of them being pretty laughably bad. But even in the worst out of a lot of those, I'm still entertained by at least the kills and, you know, the slasher character. That's really what you come for. I don't necessarily need to be fully engulfed and in love with the protagonist and the people who are going against these slashers, because that's not always going to be the case. You're not always going to be super engaged with those characters. You really do come to these movies for the monster. You know, it's kind of like seeing a Godzilla film. You know, you can't be 100% upset that you didn't necessarily love all the human characters, because you came for the title character, Godzilla. So I kind of feel the same way about the slasher characters. I still would like to have a good story, and there's definitely more praise and more love to give to a movie if it's like that. But yeah, I just found that this movie for me just was a little bit more on the boring side. There was times where my eyes were really heavy, and I'm usually pretty good about staying up and watching movies unless I'm watching something super late. It just had that boring factor for me because I was just struggling to keep my eyes open at certain times. But I did follow along. I wrote my notes down, and yeah. So, like I said, Alice is now pregnant with Dan's kid. He ends up getting killed, and probably one of the coolest kills in the film, where he ends up falling asleep while he's driving, and Freddy ends up showing up and kind of, you know, takes him on this dream journey where his car is now going crazy. He ends up getting onto a motorcycle, and then the motorcycle starts fusing into him, kind of like literally the wires going into his arms and his face. He kind of turns into this Robo Man. There's a bunch of one-liners from Freddy here, who's like kind of controlling the motorcycle that he's on, and ends up, you know, crashing him into a bus. And when you kind of cut to what's actually happened, he was just asleep at the wheel and ends up crashing his van. He was into a semi-truck, but he was never ever on a motorcycle. So, you know, that was kind of like a cool kind of dream sequence kind of kill. That's what you come to these movies for. But yeah, now you have Alice kind of having just lost the love of her life. She's pregnant. She's dealing with his parents trying to get custody of her, the kid. And then the biggest kind of thing that made this film a little bit different is the fact that she's having dreams while she's awake. Now, before I get too much further into all of that, what I do want to say is that the way that they bring back Freddy in this movie is god awful. Alice ends up going into some sort of dream sequence where we get to see Amanda Krueger, which we'll get a lot more of in this movie. That's, you know, Freddy Krueger's mother, the nun that we've learned was raped by a bunch of just disgusting and evil men and kind of just created Freddy, which is not how biology works, but okay. And yeah, so in this dream sequence, she's thinking about Freddy. She ends up finding Amanda Krueger in this dream sequence. She sees Amanda Krueger give birth, and it kind of comes out as this burnt up, evil, demonic looking baby that looks like a baby Freddy Krueger. It ends up getting away, and in her dream sequence, they end up going to the same cathedral that they ended up going to in the end of the fourth film where they kill Freddy. And that's where the evil baby Freddy ends up finding his sweater, crawls into the Freddy sweater, and Freddy is back. Yeah, what a terrible way to bring the character back. Now, it's not the worst thing, I guess, compared to some of these other slasher characters. Literally, I think in Child's Play 3, the third Chucky film, he comes back literally from the blood of his dead body prior touching melted plastic, and then that blood ends up kind of just mixing with the melted plastic and creating a new Chucky. So yeah, you got to kind of be forgiving of the way that they resurrect all these slasher characters for film after film after film where they kill them at the very end, because it just kind of is malarkey. That's all you can say. It is just 100% garbage, and it's just something you kind of have to lean into. If not, you will never enjoy these films. So I did want to mention that before I got too much further. So yeah, throughout the course of the film, you have to see Alice kind of going through these different dream sequences similar to what was happening in the other films. But what makes this one a little bit different is because she's pregnant, she's starting to have dreams while she's awake. And the reason for that is because the baby is dreaming. And throughout the course of the film, she starts to see kind of like a young child who is the baby, just a little bit older. And he's kind of telling her that Freddy's coming for him in the dreams, and that now she's trying to save her unborn baby from Freddy in her unborn baby's dreams, which she is also sharing. And if that sounds convoluted to you, it is. This movie just kind of went bizarre in the wrong direction. And I've always loved what they do with the kind of crazy, fun dream elements throughout the course of these films. But this one, I think, just took it too far in the wrong direction. And then there's the whole thing going on with Amanda Krueger and the whole Catholic storyline and her being raped by all these different men. And it was strange. It was just a very strange movie, and we're going to get more into it, but let's go ahead and hear what Blacktastic had to say about this one.
Oh, buddy. Man. My man, Anthony A. Perez, hit me up via Instagram. Yo, you down for another collab? I'm like, yo, I'm down. Anthony made me wait for a little minute before he sent me the poster. When he finally sent it, I'm like, oh, shit. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. Damn, this movie was bad. You know, basically 4, 5, and 6 was a rabbit hole of films to get worse and worse and worse. 4, I kind of liked it. It was the last one that had a little bit of storytelling that made a little bit of sense, but it started to get really dumb then. But this one here, boy, it takes the cake. 1989 is when this movie dropped. I never forget. I just graduated from high school, and my parents went away to Texas for 2 weeks for a family reunion. So here I am, 18 years old, man, 2 weeks alone in a 3-bedroom, 2-car garage house, kicking it. right for the summertime. And my best friend Scott, basically he lived with me for the whole 2 weeks, man. We was kicking it, right? The cool thing is we went out one night in the north area and we met a couple of babes. They were college girls. They were older. They had their own place. And we hit it off really well. I said, look, come back to my house for some drinks. I'll make some 7 and 7 and we can kick it. That's what we did, man. I went and hid all my parents' pictures, made it look like the place belonged to me and Scott. Man, it was crazy. And it was opening weekend for Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. I like, y'all want to go to the movies? They're like, bet, we are down. And back then, all we did is go to the drive-in just so we can make out. I had my own car. Scott had his own car. The girls had their own car. They came over. My man was flexing. He was outside. We was washing our cars in the sun with our shirts off. You know, brothers was in shape. It was cool, man. So later on that night, they came back over to my crib. We hopped in my ride and just drove over to the movie theater. No, I take that back. They drove their car. And I was in the passenger side, and my homeboy was in the back seat with his girl, his date. And we went to the it was called the drive-in on Bradshaw. And man, let me tell you, we had mediocre jobs back then. We were still teenagers. We were dating women in their mid-20s. So we was learning the ropes of dating older women. And boy, did we get bamboozled. They drive up inside to the theater part where you pay at. And the guy said, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 people. That'd be blankety blank, blank, blank. I forgot how much it was. And both of the women just folded their arms. I'm like, oh shit, we gotta pay. Okay. So I'm reaching into my pocket, and not Charles, but my man Scott was reaching into his pocket. We had enough money to pay for all 4 of us, but after that, the motherfucker, we was broke. And this is new. So we went inside, she parked the car. She goes, I'll be back. I go get the popcorn and candy and soda. I'm like, oh, word, I get it. You go Dutch. The guys pay for the film and the women get the food and snacks. I'm like, okay, because man, we were struggling. My pockets were strapped. Brother, my money was funny and my change was strange. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, here we are on an awkward date watching this horrific movie. Alice is back from part 4. Come to find out she's pregnant. Her and Dan are now officially girlfriend and boyfriend. And some weird shit goes on through a dream sequence, and Freddy is resurrected. And this is stupid. They're bringing his mom, Amanda Krueger, who is cute, by the way. She got raped by 1,000 maniacs, and it's weird how they had brought her story back into this story. But make a long story short, Freddy is born from his mom and is a little infant Freddy Krueger, disgusting glob of a child. And he's crawling through the hospital. He had tried to attack Alice. This motherfucker ends up in a chapel, sees his clothes laying on the ground, and crawls into him. And within seconds, he's a full-grown Freddy Krueger with some long-ass arms. I'm like, man, this is worse than that dog Jason pissing in the last movie. God damn. And then you meet her friends. You know, it's graduation. She has a friend named Yvonne. She's black, and I think half Puerto Rican. I'm like, okay, yeah, she's dead. She's black. Greta, she's the one with the model with the overbearing mom, and some other dude who's into comics. And the first kill is her own boyfriend, Dan. This motherfucker gets hooked up. He sees a crazy dream sequence. She sees one, so he's rushing over to his girl, Alice, to make sure she's okay at the diner. But Freddy pops up in a car, drinking and driving, passenger, acting a fool, throwing liquor on his body, turns to acid, pours his arm off. It's elaborate. He ends up on a motorcycle, Dan does, and Freddy, with these one-liner after one-liner after one-liner, just, it's bad, man. Kind of a cool kill, when you look at the other kills in the movie, this is probably the best of the 3 kills in this movie because he only kills 3 people. Next, we get into the scene where Greta is having dinner with her mom and friends at this function at the house. You know, Greta's trying to watch her weight, trying to stay fit and trim and beautiful. And Freddy knows this. She falls asleep at the damn table and wakes up. Freddy comes in there as Chef Boyardee burnt and starts shoving food in her mouth. She bloats up, gets overfed. She's bloated as she pops out of the refrigerator in the dream sequence where Alice is at. Freddy pulls her back in, kills her, and it makes it look like she chokes on food and dies at the dinner table. It's terrible. The third kill, a lot of people like this one. It's cool. The dude, the comic book boy, he goes into a dream sequence where he's fighting Freddy in cartoon land. And yeah, Freddy chops his ass up like confetti, and it's a paper mache parade, and it's kind of cool but lackluster. And I was surprised that the black chick Yvonne didn't die. I'm like, what? I don't know, the NAACP or something must have came in and said, look, too many black motherfuckers are dying in these movies too early. You need to have at least one black motherfucker survive. And I think that's what happened. But this movie is utter hot garbage. It's bad, man. The director didn't know what he was doing. The script was written by several different people. It was one thing after another that didn't make sense. They really tried to go elaborate with the dream sequences, but it was not scary ever. Freddy is actually kind of irritating in this movie. You know, Freddy wasn't on his A game. And I'm like, damn, motherfucker riding around on skates. I mean, he's doing dumb shit. He's doing some stupid ass shit in this movie. And they repeat some things. He got souls coming out of his body, except there's only 3 of them, the 3 people that he killed. And then this whole baby thing. The whole premise, Freddy can live and torture you because of the baby's dreams. I guess babies dream 70% of the time when they're in the womb. And that was the premise of him haunting and terrorizing these teens because of an unborn child. Yeah, that shit was stupid. It didn't make sense. I was intrigued a little bit with the Amanda Krueger story point. You know, the fact his mom was always a interesting character. But this movie is bad, yo. This movie is straight boo. I mean, and how they kill this motherfucker. The unborn child is all of a sudden born, running around with them big ass eyes. It's a creepy looking kid, has some big ass eyes, man. Motherfucker look like a goon. But he's half Freddy. The mom pops back in the picture. Well, Alice kind of like transforms into Freddy and splits apart. I don't understand what they were trying to do in this movie. And they try to use practical effects to try to make it gross, but this movie, the practical effects just wasn't tight. It looked too rubbery and fake, and it just wasn't nothing like the last previous films. So this unborn child is now walking around talking and using very bad English. This script is terrible, like an 80-year-old wrote it. He has a puff of smoke come out of his mouth along with his long ass tongue, and it impales Freddy Krueger in his chest. Yeah, the little baby jumps out his back, kills him, runs to the mom, and she's saved so her spirit can move on, and Alice is still pregnant with that baby. And at the end of the movie, they're all having like a little picnic with her best friend Yvonne and the father. Yeah, this movie's weird. You had people try to adopt the unborn child because they thought she was going to be a bad mother. This movie, and her powers of pulling people in her dreams suddenly disappeared. This movie made no sense. It's the most incohesive of all the films. I did some research. It's the lowest grossing one out of all the movies. And boy, there lies the truth of how bad this film was. But man, believe it or not, it gets worse. There's one called Part 6, Freddy's Dead. Brother, this rabbit hole goes deep. But man, Anthony A. Perez, please step to the mic and tell these folks how you feel about this garbage piece of shit of a film called Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. And I'm out. Peace.
A big thanks to Blacktastic for being here in this video. Yeah, I can already tell I have more to say on this. You had plenty to say. I loved hearing your insight and your story on how you actually went to see this movie for the first time and what you thought about it today. So a big thanks to Blacktastic for being here in this video. As usual, you guys can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. Go give him some love, and let's go ahead and continue talking about this dumpster fire of a movie. So like I mentioned, Alice is now dealing with all this stuff going on with the baby and the dreams, the Freddy's inside the baby's dreams, and there's all this crazy stuff going on. Dan is now dead, the love of her life, who was kind of a throwaway character in the fourth film. I didn't really feel like he had much of a purpose. And then watching the fifth film, he's similarly just kind of a throwaway character. There's really nothing about him that really makes his character endearing or really charming, and he's taken out so early in the film that you just can't really help but not give a shit. Then you have the character of Greta, who ends up getting fed to death because she's essentially this young girl who's coming out of high school, who's a model. She's got an overbearing mother who kind of wants to get her into all these modeling agencies, and she kind of forces her not to eat. And so she ends up falling asleep at the table while she's having dinner with her family, or she's kind of having like a daydream sequence. Again, it's kind of strange. You never know when people are falling asleep in this movie compared to some of the other ones. Freddy ends up coming to kill her by overfeeding her, and what he's actually feeding her is herself in the dream. So then she starts to choke in real life, and she ends up just dying there. But in the dream sequence, Freddy comes in with like a chef hat, and he's like literally like feeding her insides to herself. Her face gets all bloated, and she ends up dying that way. And so, I found that to be a more inventive kill. I was pretty open about in the fourth film that I found that film didn't really have inventive kills. It just felt like people were killed, and it just didn't really feel like those kills were fun and exciting. And even in this film, I think even though there's only 3 kills, I think at least they're kind of inventive. And then you have the character of Mark, who ends up getting killed via a comic booky kind of kill. This is one that tends to be people's favorites. I would say it's probably my second favorite. I think the Dan one is a little bit cooler, but this one is definitely strange and inventive. I'll give it at least inventive, even though I don't necessarily think it's like a great kill for the franchise. This guy is actually, kind of like a dweeby guy who's really into comic books, and he draws comic book characters, and he has a comic book character that he kind of envisions himself as, that he's created. And in his dream sequence, when he ends up falling to sleep, he realizes that he's about to get killed by Freddy. Freddy's in there. I think Freddy's like riding on a skateboard or riding on skates. I can't remember. And it's all black and white. And this character, Mark, ends up turning himself in his dream sequence into this character from the comic book. So now he turns into a superhero, which is just absolutely cheesy, and you can already tell that it's going down the wrong direction as soon as this happens. But we have seen that happen before, where characters can use the dream world to kind of bring out powers with the third film, but I think that film executed it a lot better. But yeah, once he pulls out his comic book character, Freddy ends up turning into Super Freddy, which is one of the only times in the franchise where we see a different actor playing Freddy for a brief moment. It's like literally Hulk Freddy, who's just big and massive. And yeah, he ends up slicing him up in the dream world. He ends up slicing him up in this comic book world. And instead of it being like a bloody kill, it's just Freddy kind of slicing up the person made of paper. It's like kind of just a drawing of this character, and he's just kind of slicing him up, and that's how he dies. So it is inventive, but it's just okay. And that's kind of how I feel about this movie overall. I think it's easily one of the worst in the franchise. It feels messy with the narrative. The special effects in certain moments and the makeup done on Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger and some of the kills I think are top notch. There's definitely some good effects. The animatronic on the little demon Freddy baby at the beginning of the movie I thought was well done as well. But as a movie overall, it's bit boring. It's kind of whatever. It's one of the more forgettable ones in the franchise, and even the most memorable moments aren't even some of the most memorable moments in the entire franchise. So yeah, that's gonna be my thoughts on The Dream Child, part 5 to Freddy Krueger's saga. Yeah, this is one that I think that when you rewatch the whole saga, if you're doing the full binge, it's going to be a hard one to get through, and it's not one I'm necessarily clamoring to rewatch anytime soon. So yeah, I want to hear what you guys have to say. Comment your thoughts down below. Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? As usual, thank you to Blacktastic for being in this video, and you can find the link to his channel down below in the description box, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.